The trick to teaching a dog to hunt within gun range is very simple. So if your dog's too clingy to you, you plant birds in the field. If your dog's roaming too far out, you're rolling them from your vest. And I even see, dogs that aren't steady that chase birds off, right? Birds flashing off they go. A lot of the spaniel trainers know that, hey, I'm not going to be able to call them back right now, so I'm not even going to try. But I'm going to throw a clipped wing right out in front of me. So when he comes back, he's going to go, yeah, guy was here the whole time. So you're teaching him that birds are near you. But as far as distance and keeping it in line, it's the difference between planting a bird and rolling a bird.
All right, John Huddleston, Over the Mountain Kennels, welcome to the show. We've been talking about doing this for the better part of a year now. I'm glad that we're finally able to connect and do a little Flushing dog talk. I know I have a few listeners that are always on my case about getting some Flushing dogs on here, but here you are. We're finally making it happen. I'm glad that you could spare some time for it.
Hey, thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to it, talking about Boykins and how they progressed from being retrievers to really being spaniels and really doing what they should be doing, been doing all along. So I'm looking forward to talking to you.
Yeah, I'm excited to jump down that rabbit hole. Also, we have a nice big announcement to make on behalf of Bird Dog Society and the St. Huberts Trial, which was a huge success last year, and I want to get into that. But first, there's a few kennel names out there that kind of strike my interest, and I'm curious how they developed the name. And Over the Mountain Kennels, that just kind of speaks to me a little bit. So I'm curious, let's start off with that. Instead of introducing yourself, let's introduce the kennel. How do we come up with the Over the Mountain Kennels name?
Well, that's really funny. And we're from Birmingham, and so there's an area of town that's actually over a mountain called Red Mountain from being downtown. And that area has always been called Over the Mountain. And so we named it that. And that worked well for us for years. And when we moved to North Carolina, it stuck because, A, we already had a great name. But B, we're still over a mountain.
I was about to say.
We're right over. Yeah.
It's perfectly in line. From me to you, I have to go over a mountain to get to you.
Yeah, it is. And, we were Over the Mountain Boykins in Birmingham, and we changed it when we moved here. Because I want to add a cocker or a springer to the mix at some point.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's get on into, actually first, let's get to the St. Huberts Trial. Let's get the fun out of the way. Uh-huh. For those that may be unfamiliar with the event last year, we held the second annual one in Cheraw, South Carolina in February, and it is now officially, as this podcast comes out, it's announced we're taking registrations for people to sign up. It's going to be February the 8th and 9th. And it's once again going to be in Cheraw, South Carolina. But it's kind of a unique style of trial. It's completely different. It's not really for registration. It's really more so for just bragging rights and fun. And John, you were the Flushing Dog trial class judge last year, and you've agreed to return in that same class for the Flushing trial dogs. I got to ask, what was so special about last year's trial that, we twisted your arm and you agreed to do it again?
The whole trial is so different than anything I've ever done before. It's it's very hunter specific. It's very sportsmanship focused. It's not about having the quickest hunt. It's really about which dog do I want to put in my truck and bring home?
Right.
And the first 2 years we've done it, I've judged for both years, and the format is there's an interview part where you talk about hunting, and you're asking really hunting specific questions. One might be a gimme, and one might be a little harder. And then off you go to hunt, and it's you, a guy, and his dog. And it's a nice gentleman hunt, is what I can say.
Yeah.
And through Cooper Black, where we were last year, it was in a really neat, kind of tight, woodsy, grassy area that really felt like hunting. And really, I guess it was. We put out birds and we were hunting. the other thing about it is, the point system for it is unique. If you're running an AKC trial, you're not shooting. If you're doing a run and shoot thing, that's totally different too. Those are like on the verge of your dad whipping you in the back of the head for running with a gun. You're not quite, but you are. And but the way this one worked, it was it's just different. It's just a different feel.
Yeah.
And I sure hope that it gets embraced and people pick up and we get a fourth year and a fifth year. It's modeled after one in Europe, and their whole point of it is sportsmanship. Now, back to the point thing that I was telling you about is, you get points for flushing a bird. You get some points for shooting the bird. You get major deductions if your dog doesn't get the bird back. And that's the way it should be, right? Because it being sportsman focused.
Mm-hmm.
The atmosphere is way more relaxed than any trial I've ever been in, and without doubt, everybody had a good time and want to come back. I'll plug my son on it as well. For the first year, he did this, and then he asked to do this for the second year, and he dressed every bird that was shot, cleaned them up, vacuum sealed them, and gave them to the handlers to take home, and that was just an exclamation point on the sportsmanship part of the whole thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I can echo a lot of the same things, the same qualities that appealed to you, appealed to me, and so many others. Essentially, the best way I can sum it up is it just kind of brought the enjoyment. It was a low pressure, low barrier for entry. If anybody has any desire to possibly try some new things, a new trial, dip their toes into it without the fear of the unknown. It doesn't matter. It's just for fun. It's not going to go on any paperwork or registration. There was myself was the pointers hunter judge, and then Jake Bartels was the pointer trialer class. So you had different divisions based on how serious you wanted to take it. And what was interesting is the point system is there's really no official point system. It's kind of left up to the discretion of each judge and how they want to roll their field. This year, it's going to be interesting because all three of us are returning. It's the same classifications, but we're also adding 2 more judges this year. And the pointing hunting division is going to split up into 2 classes, where last year I did all of it. This year we're going to split it up in half, and we're going to have the participants are going to be kind of under me one day, but then the next day they're going to be under Nick Larson of the Birdshot podcast. He's agreed to come on and host the other pointer hunter division, and then the flusher hunter division, which we're super excited. We really want to sell this class out because you judged the trialers division last year, and we wanted to offer up the hunters division for flushers, the guys that just have the meat dogs that just want to come out and have fun and see where their dog lies. Bob Owens of the Lone Duck Chronicles podcast has agreed to come on and do that. And then we've also added a number of other events throughout the weekend. We're going to have a big Saturday night like blowout dinner, and Friday night we'll have a welcoming dinner and some other little small competitions. But essentially, we wanted to grow it. To your point, we want it to stick around because it is special and unique, but we didn't want to lose what made it special to begin with. And something that really appealed to a lot of the participants over the last 2 years, and even the judges and the new ones coming on, was what you alluded to it earlier, the kind of quizzing and asking questions, the trivia throughout the walk. I think that's a little different perspective, but it went over real big with the participants last year. The judges had a lot of fun with it, so definitely we brought that back. So I've gotten a lot of questions since we released that episode. I'll have that episode in the show notes if you want to hear more about it with Grayson and Jake afterwards. But if you're curious and you want to go sign up, hit the link in the show notes, or just go to birddogsociety.org. You can find the event, sign up, and I think it's $90 per participant per trial, and that gives you an opportunity of up to, I think, 5 birds, and so on and so forth. The rules and regs are all listed there. But so if you are interested in trying something new in February, then this is the trial for you. It's real low key. It's a lot of fun. There was no drama last year, which I can't tell you the last time I went to a dog event that there was no drama. But John, I was hoping that I would get over there to your division last year, because one thing that this is kind of a nice little segue here. I've never attended a Flushing dog trial in person, and so I was kind of curious to see what you had going on in your field last year. But that kind of steers right on into this conversation and topic as far as the Boykins and everything. Flushing dogs in general. I want to start there. You just said that you were originally Boykins only. You wanted to leave room open for some Springers or Cockers or something like that. Talk to me about, in your eyes, what makes a quality Flushing dog, and we can kind of go down each individual breed or stick to the Boykins, whatever you prefer.
Well, yeah, it's interesting, like I alluded to, that the history of the Boykin really is retriever work. The history also has the dog flushing turkeys and in fall turkey season, and then coming back and then having the hunter call them back to their cubby. And so I started off doing retriever work, and then we had an opportunity to really play the flushing game, and it was nostalgic for me because we had always hunt quail with my grandfather, so that kind of hunting is more fun to me than just retriever work. And the birds taste a lot better too. So a good flushing dog is going to cover the ground, is going to work closely with the handler, be independent enough that he's covering the ground without a lot of handling or direction, but also checking in with the handler and making sure that he's within gun range. So you're not going to get a nice flushing dog that's 80 yards out on a nice point and you walk up to it. You're watching your dog for the tail getting excited because it's about to be game on. And it's really exciting that way. So, a good flushing dog will cover the ground, has a great nose, knows how to use the wind. And, that's a little bit of his genes and a whole lot of exposure to understanding it.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much it, really.
Yeah. So obviously I'm more familiar with the pointing dog world. And so when we talk about covering ground, our language probably paints a different picture in my head than your head, right? Range in the pointing dog world is a very common debate, if you will, between people and their preferences. But to me, correct me if I'm wrong, with flushing dogs, it seems like there's really kind of an undeniable, you can't really debate it, that if you're going to have a flushing dog kicking birds up, then technically they have to be in gun range for you to have a shot at it, right? So you don't really have that. It's not really open for debate. You have to have them within a certain area. What do you say, about 20, 30 yards-ish?
That's about how far I can shoot.
Okay.
and it's probably low and behind at that point. But, about 20, 25, 30 yards tops. It depends on what the wind's doing. And really quartering and covering the ground left and right in front of you. A lot of the field trialers will do have your dog teach a figure 8 pattern to make sure he covers the ground. I just teach generally to work guns or work yourself. And then because you want them to learn the wind. If it's a strong crosswind, you want them digging deep on the right side if it's coming from the left. That's something that's learned. And but definitely hunting close. And I've had a lot of the old timer spaniel guys really helped me with that, because it's a very different attitude than retriever work, where You're trying to maintain a straight line. You're trying to have strict control. I mean, it's really a partnership. And I've heard people talking about it. You're dancing with your dog as you go back and forth through the field, and and a fun hunt and is pretty like that. Um, so yeah, hunting close, hunting within gun range. If you want to debate whether the dog should be steady or not, if I'm out hunting pheasants, I probably don't want them steady.
Mm-hmm.
I want them getting on that bird as fast as possible. If I'm hunting something that's flying low like a quail, I want my dog sticking to the ground so nobody shoots them.
Right. Yeah, very often steadiness is not even so much for the handler as it is for the co-hunters. If you're guiding somebody, if you have a kid in the field, the steadiness. I think a lot of people might misconstrue steadiness as being something that's quote unquote better for the outcome of the hunt, and I would personally argue that it's more for the just overall enjoyment or aesthetics of the hunt, but certainly more so in the safety of the hunt overall.
Sure. Or if you have two dogs out in the field that are hunting, the dog that produces the game should be getting the retrieve, and the other dog should sit there and not interfere.
Right. So going back to when you're talking about quartering and everything, I often hear when I do have the privilege of talking to a flushing dog person or handler, they'll often use the term questing. Is that the same thing as quartering and searching the field? Can you kind of delineate that for me?
It probably has more of a style to the eagerness I can't use the word quest because that's what we're defining, but the eagerness to enter cover and enter areas that are probably birdie as he's quartering.
Okay, so more or less, if they actually have something, they need to go jump into some cover or a thicket, and say they catch wind, they need to actually go explore that and quest for that bird, I guess, to seek it out, if you will.
I would say quartering is kind of I won't say a pattern, but
the windshield wiper
doesn't really have. Yeah, I mean, you see that too, right? You see dogs doing windshield wiper stuff, and with certain wind conditions, that's appropriate. But I would think that quest has more to do with eagerness and style.
Okay. So more enthusiasm.
Yeah.
As far as, let's jump into the steadiness, I want to dig a little bit deeper into that. Okay. Besides just saying that, it's more for steadiness because, or more for safety. Flushing steadiness looks completely different. And I had my buddy Landon actually sent me a video of his, he competes in HRC with a German wirehair pointer. And he was telling me in their pointer division, they still have to flush the bird and then immediately stop. And he sent me a video of that. And I think it might shock a lot of people at not the fact that the flushing dog kicks a bird up, but then has to stop. It's how fast, like it's literally like almost in one motion to where it's just like they just shovel it up. I always envision like a step or two, almost like momentum takes them through the bird and they kick it out. But after seeing some of the videos he sent me, it's like, no, that bird, as soon as they're in the air, their butt's on the ground. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and in the spaniel game, the bird is really your dog's bird until it clears his reach. So if you have a low flyer, that in terms of steadiness, your dog is still all over that until it clears. Now, that makes it a lot harder to have your dog stop at that point when he's full steam ahead again after this bird and has a face full of it. But it happens, right? And so it's not I found a bird, it moved and I sat. It's really, I've gotten this bird up in the air for you to shoot. And once that occurs, you must sit. And,
so is them flushing the bird almost like throwing the bird, or I call it like shovel launching a bird? Is that kind of unique into each individual flushing dog, kind of akin or similar to like a pointing dog and their staunchness on point? Each dog kind of has a different intensity on point. Do these flushing dogs have a different, I don't know, style or intensity on flushing?
Absolutely. So if you go and look at go to the AKC website and look at hunting styles for their flushing breeds, um, they all have slightly different. A Springer is going to be all over that bird. Boom. Um, a a poodle doing it may pause and then jump in and flush. And so when you're judging something like that, you really have to take into consideration what each breed is supposed to do. And that makes it very different than the retriever work that I've done in the past. Your retriever needs to act just like a lab,
right?
Because that's what they are, right? And that's the standard. But it's pretty unique. I don't know about your pointing world if they take each breed and standard and hunting style into consideration, or it's, hey, your dog must really just these are the things it has to do. And so every time I'm judging one of these, I'm looking up and making sure I completely understand how they're supposed to, because I don't want to ding a dog for doing what he's supposed to do.
Right. Yeah. As far as I know, I think that the point is only to a standard, regardless of breed. It doesn't matter if you have a Griff, if you have a short hair, if you have a French Brittany. It doesn't matter. It still comes down to a point is a point is a point. So there's a standard on the pointing scale. The only thing I can think of that really changes like that in the pointing dog world, like based on breed, is in the conformation ring. Different characteristics and requirements there. So I find it really interesting in the flushing division or flushing trials. As a judge, you have to familiarize yourself with that. Are there actual strict guidelines? Are there actual breed standards for flushing style? That's interesting. I'm not familiar with a pointing breed having breed standards when it comes to a point.
Right. Well, a Clumber is going to quarter and hunt very differently than a Springer.
Mm-hmm.
Right. They're both flushing dogs, but they were bred to do things differently. A Clumber's not going to be ranging big. He's going to be working a ditch or a fence line or something like that, where it's thick and nasty. And so just because they're both doing the same end game, they were bred differently to do things different ways. So you really have to take that in consideration.
Yeah. We don't have to get into the weeds on each one, but can you kind of give like a general overarching, just based on each breed, kind of what different working styles you would get from each one? Because from my understanding, the Springers are kind of like the crackhead vacuum. They're just going to suck up the entire field. And Boykins are probably a little more thorough, methodical, if you will. I don't know if that's accurate, but if you can kind of provide us just an overall hit the high waves on each of the main flushing breeds.
Well, why don't I'll go through a couple.
Okay.
Your main flushing breeds really are Springers and Cockers. We're to the game late. And really where I would, it's a minor breed. And so, Cockers will hunt a lot tighter. They're both real fast, but the Cocker, the Springer will be doing bigger open quartering, and the Cocker's your crackhead that's hunting close. I had a buddy that said, yeah, these dogs are perpetually manic, and they are, but that's what they were bred to do. And it's exciting. I'll say a Boykin is neither of those, but probably hunts more like a Springer, but more methodical.
Okay. What about, you mentioned the Clumber, you mentioned a poodle already, labs fall into this, golden retrievers, they're all kind of classified as flushing dogs. From my understanding, again, a loose understanding of this world, that they're all capable of the job, But if you're a true flushing dog enthusiast, from my understanding, those other breeds kind of leave something to be desired in the actual flush or how they work. They're obviously capable of doing it. Would you say that's fair to say?
I would say that's fair to say. It maybe not leave something to be desired, but it really depends on the kind of hunt you're doing.
Mm.
You know, a lab won the first year we did St. Hubert, and really covered the ground great. Was agile, was fun to watch, was steady, and the bird was shot into the thickest stuff they had in the whole field, and that dog flew in there and came flying back out with it. And I'm like, that's one on my truck.
Yeah, I'll take it right now.
Yeah, and so you had mentioned earlier between different dogs. Yes, each dog is a little different, but you should be going with the standard. Other minor breeds might be Welsh Springers, or and then like you'd mentioned several of the retriever breeds that are doing this or playing the game, and they're not Springers,
right?
But a Springer's not a lab. So maybe not leaving something to be desired is not the right word. It's just understanding what the dog was bred for and rolling with that.
Yeah. It's the same thing in the pointing world. I just keep bringing that back up because I'm more familiar with it. It's the same thing as, comparing a small Munster point to an English pointer or an English setter. Like it's not the same thing. Do they still do it? Yes, they're capable. They're doing it. But if you're talking about like if you picture that just hard, staunch, trembling point, there might be something left to be desired if you're looking at a small Munster point, and it's not to denigrate that breed. It's just a different dog, and so they'll still point, but it's just not going to be on the same scale. Whereas, like on a scale of 1 to 10, those pointers and setters might be a 9 or 10, and the Munster, while it still points, it still might still be like a 4 or 5 relative to the pointer or setter.
Yeah, well, there's something to the beauty of it, like you said too.
Yeah.
Hey, here's my puppy.
Well, and each dog and each breed is different too. I mean, it's like I've seen some Munsters with some really staunch points, but just talking general averages here. Before we move on, because I'm really curious to get into the flushing trial world and the tradition of it, because it's been going on for quite a while. I want to go back into the range because I think anytime I've gotten a lot of questions from flushing dog owners, very often, more often than not, it's somebody coming through the lens of trying to figure out how to get their dog to work within the range. So can you kind of talk to me about how we get these flushing dogs to work within gun range?
So, you're talking about training and how to get your dog to do this. You don't treat a spaniel with lots of pressure. We had talked about questing and style earlier. I think lots of pressure erodes all that. So you look at the traditional spaniel trainers, they probably don't even have an e-collar on them. They teach it all tight and then expand it as and does that gradually so that the distance doesn't really erode the control so bad. And the trick to teaching a dog to hunt in within gun range is very simple. So if your dog's too clingy to you, you plant birds in the field. If your dog's roaming too far out, you're rolling them from your vest as you're teaching all this. And so there's that fine line between, okay, is it going too far out? Boom. And I even see dogs that aren't steady that chase birds off, right? Birds flashing off, they go. A lot of the spaniel trainers know that, hey, I'm not going to be able to call them back right now, so I'm not even going to try. But I'm going to throw a clipped wing right out in front of me. So when he comes back, he's going to go, yeah, guy was here the whole time. All right. So you're teaching him that birds are near you.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as distance and keeping it in line, it's the difference between planting a bird and rolling a bird.
I like it. It's a nice balance. It reminds me of, when people talk about basic obedience, especially in regards to a pointing dog puppy. I tell everybody, make sure everything that you're doing with a pointing dog specifically starts with going away from you, not bringing it into you. And so I always assumed that would translate into the flushing dog world, because a dog's a dog. I would assume that something like that, to where if the dog is stuck closer to you, well, they need to understand that the reward is out there and they need to go find it. And then vice versa, if the dog's just not wanting to play ball with you, but they associate you with the reward. And I've seen a lot of pointing dog owners make this mistake, to where they do too many pigeon bombs in the field, and then they're wondering why the dog's underfoot from them the whole time. And I didn't know if it was something. I'm assuming, like, if you're not using e-collars and stuff like that, are we using check cords, or do we have like turns with the whistle? How are we managing this in the field through a training session?
You had mentioned teaching your dog to go away from you. In the spaniel world, and you probably don't do a whole lot of sit in what you're doing, but you're teaching your dog to sit, go away from you, or come to you, and combinations of that, right? Yeah, as you're teaching the whistles. So I'll start off with a young puppy, and I'll just go for walks with a whistle in my hand, in my mouth, and I'll start walking one way, and the puppy will, get out in front of me, and I'll toot toot, and I'll start walking the other way, and before you know it, the dog's quartering in front of you. So the dogs work by repetition, learn by that, and so you just do that enough, and next thing you know, you're walking, your dog's just in front of you. Now, in a trial, like not the St. Huberts where you're shooting your own gun, but like say an AKC trial or Boykin National, you have gunners on either side of you, and they're gunning and you're handling your dog. So you are teaching your dog to hunt between the guns. So they're on either side. There's you, two judges behind you, unless you're running a brace, and you're traversing a field. And so again, wind matters, especially as you progress up the different categories. You're expected, if you're running the open, you're expected that your dog understands how to do the wind and will hunt appropriately. May not go all the way out to this gun because you've got the wind's coming across, and the dog can smell anything from over there all the way at the other side, right?
Yeah.
So
and really a lot of that stuff, that's kind of left open to the judge to pay attention to that, to recognize the fact that, okay, that dog didn't quarter all the way to that gunner, but the wind, they're still hunting the wind. They still check the wind, so they don't have to go all the way to that hunter.
Oh yeah, the right judge would be going, all right, we're rolling. Right?
And I just wanted to iterate that, because you have people listening to this that may be completely unfamiliar, and I think a lot of times they might they might be envisioning that I have to control the dog, and left and right, and really when you build this up in a dog, it kind of more or less just happens. It switches into autopilot by the time you're getting into the trial field, and so you don't really have to concern yourself with that, I'm assuming. How important is it in a flushing trial for the handler to guide the field? Or, because again, pointing dog world, we kind of more or less will follow our dog as they go hunt, right?
So, you are traversing a field. So as a handler, your job is to put your dog in the best position to find birds. Now, and I'll back up on that. My goal is not to blow my whistle at all to get him to turn or to get him to sit. But if my dog has missed a spot because he's been over here and we've moved, I'll show him, hey, go over there and check that out before we move on. And so as the dog's traversing in front of you and quartering in front of you, he's going to look over and check to see if there's a different set of directions. If not, he's going to keep doing, kind of like the Army, keep doing what you're told to do until
right.
something else, right? And And so you teach the dog to come through and just, and glance at you and say, okay, we're good. And really, with my advanced dogs, I can just turn my shoulder and the dog's going that way. It's no fun to be in a field when somebody's hacking their whistle all the way through it.
Right.
It even drives me a little bonkers when people flush, the dog gets flushed and sits and they blow the whistle to do it. The dog knows that. You've taught the dog that flush means sit, that shot means sit, right? So a dog should be steady to the flush and the shot. And, if you're running a brace and there's a shot, your dog should sit and honor that other dog working. If he's not running a brace, he flushes the bird, he should sit. Flush means sit. And you do that with little drills in the yard when they're puppies, a bumper or a pigeon or tennis ball, that you have the dog out and you tell them to hup, which is what you say in Spaniel world, to sit, and throw the ball behind you. That way you can stop the dog from running by you. He takes off, you grab him, you put him back down, you go pick up the bumper, and we can circle back to the people that are just learning this. I'll tell you, when I'm training, it's probably 75% clipped wing birds. I want that dog chasing aggressively that bird. If he gets flushed and he gets a shot, half the time I'll go pick it up because I want him to sit there until I've told him to go. And so he needs to know, hey, it's not always mine, but if it is, by God, I'm getting it, right? And so those are little things that the new people don't realize. New people to the sport may be going, hey, I've got 20 pigeons or chucker or whatever we're training with. We're gonna blast the hell out of them and have a great time. And it's not that. It's getting nice, pretty flush, getting a crisp sit. All those things happen not by having a bird blow up in their face, but by having a bird that's so anxious that he can't fly, that he's trying to get the hell out of there. So it a lot of those type of tricks, not really tricks, but things that I've learned or been told really are true, and the new person won't understand that. So if you're new, 75% clips. Teach them to be steady in the yard without birds first. If you throw something up, the butt goes down.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the first time I did that with my dog Bixby, I did that yard work. First time she was on a bird, she flushed a bird, boom, sat. No whistle, no nothing. And I'm like, okay, those guys were right. That's how you do it. It's amazing, right?
Well, sticking with the brand new person in mind on this, I'm curious, let's say that they got their flushing dog puppy at the house. This is their first time, whereas in the pointing dog world, we're really big on building a lot of drive. That, like, we really need that drive for them to go out and search and find a bird independently of us. I'm curious, when you have a puppy, are we doing a lot of drive building with these puppies? Because it sounds like it's really just err on obedience and cooperation first, and we can kind of fold birds in to where, in the world I'm used to, where we really kind of try and build that monster with the understanding that we're going to be taking some deposits out of that bank, or withdrawals from that bank, I should say.
Right. Putting brakes on it.
Right.
It's a little bit of both, right? So if you're working on retrieving with a young dog, I don't make them be steady. I don't. If something goes up in the air, you can go chase it down, because I want that momentum going out. When I'm introducing birds, it's a clip wing, and I want you chasing that bird down. I want you angry with that bird, right? And chasing that down. And when I was talking about the steady work, that's really front yard stuff, and it's not with birds. It's You're teaching a behavior, and you are blowing your whistle. Sit. And I know it's not your world, but it's. I like how you put cooperation. It's not really. This isn't a control game.
Yeah.
it's a cooperation game, and you really are working together as a team. You're dancing with your dog.
Right.
And so I've seen people that really focus way too hard on obedience, and they have a dog that's not stylish. Dog that's capable, but it's not going to win a national.
Yeah, it almost just it suppresses them. It's like you can recognize the dog out of the bunch that just had too much obedience poured on them too fast. It's like it just took something pressure out of them. Yeah, it's like in your world, I'm sure it's not maybe not as prevalent or important to focus on in my world, because in my world you can see it right out of the gate. If you have a dog that's typically should be rangy and they're just stuck underfoot and they're always looking at you, that dependency kind of gets old. You know, you always having to tell your dog to go out. With you, where like maybe the dependency isn't as big of a headache with what y'all require, you still need to have that dog enthusiastic and quartering, you know, windshield wiper in that field.
Windshield wiper, figuring eight, whatever your dog's needing to do to cover that ground. And that's why with young dogs and even with the older dogs, it's clipped wings. I want them chasing those and having momentum to the bird. Now, again, we did talk about distance. So is that momentum to the bird with a planted bird because I'm being too sticky, or rolled out because I'm ranging too far? But you're right. Pressure erodes style. And when you said that about the dog being sticky, that you see, immediately to my mind goes, oh, that dog's had too much pressure with a collar. He's scared. He doesn't know. He's either scared to go out there or he's unsure of the rules of what he's doing, and he doesn't want to get smacked. And you see that in all breeds. You know, when you have someone that uses a collar, that uses it to teach instead of to reinforce, it's a different ballgame. You know, with a spaniel, they're softer dogs, maybe hard-headed dogs, but they have a strong sense of fairness. So if I've taught a dog a behavior, and I know the dog knows the behavior, and he makes a choice not to do that, has basically an obedience infraction, then I may use a collar to say, you knew better, and you made a bad choice, buddy.
Right.
But you knew better. And I only use it when I know that the dog knows.
Yeah.
And that's fair. If you use it to teach things, you're gonna get a dog that shuts down.
Yeah. Yeah, something
like you said, scared to do anything.
Right. And you know, a phrase that's been kind of echoing through the podcast of late is the preparation of pressure. Like it's okay to use pressure, but in your words, what you're calling fair, right? Like if the dog understands what it's supposed to do, then yes, that's fair and it's acceptable. But if you just go out there and the dog doesn't know, and it's like, I'm just going to hold this button down till it goes and jumps on the place board or something, like, that's not fair, you know?
No. I mean, you teach place board first, which I do. I love the place board.
Yeah.
It's an amazing tool. We take it out on our first dove hunts. You know, you're in Tennessee, you know how crazy they can get. Right. And you go out there and there's guns going off. There are other dogs or smells. It sounds like Manassas. It's nuts. And if you've taught a dog, a young dog, to be on a place board and know, as long as I sit on here, I'm safe, you can take that place board out on your first dove hunt and you're going to have a great time. Because the dog's secure.
Yeah.
But I also use it to teach heel. I teach it to look at me and start off in front of me. When you're teaching quartering, the dog sits in front of you and looks at you, waiting for which way do I go.
Yeah. I think if I was in the retriever world or flushing dog world, I still use the place board in a lot of things, even with the pointer dogs. But I think if I was in the flushing or retriever world, I think I would use that place board for a heck of a lot more things. I'm just a general fan of the place board overall, especially when we're talking about young puppies. Generally, when I get out of the puppy stage, I kind of move away from the place board for the most part, and I just kind of revisit it on occasion. But I really like the place board for a young dog because there's so much built up into it. You're sending the dog away from you. Again, you know what we were talking about earlier. I can balance that out with recalling them. You're building duration. You can do mark and stay in behavior to build stability. You can do mark and release to build enthusiasm. You can, as soon as they touch the place board, you can throw a tennis ball or launch, or there's just so many applications that at first glance, somebody coming into the world, they're like, it's a board on the ground. What is? But based on how you use it, you can have a lot of fun with it and make a lot of ground with it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and or even if someone's coming to your house and you got a young dog and you need it to just calm down, go get in your place. You're in a duck hole and you have your dog sitting on a tree stand, or dove hunting. Those all have practical, useful things. Or if you're just teaching concepts, like you said, steadiness too. The bird goes up, your butt doesn't leave that place board.
Yeah.
2 years ago, I had a dog that I was sure was going to win one of the divisions of the Boykin Nationals. And heck, it may have been last year. And pheasant went up, the dog sat, and they shot it like right over it, and it landed about 2 feet from it and from her, and she just couldn't help herself.
No.
Right. But so what I've been doing since then, I've been having her sit and I'm throwing birds at her.
There you
go. But back to trials and tests and that kind of stuff. Always learn a little bit about my dog, and I always learn a whole lot about me in either my attitude or my training ability, or what I need to train more of. So,
well, that can be dangerous, anyway. John, learning about ourselves. It's always easier just to blame the dog. I don't want to blame the
If you're blaming the dog, you're not training enough.
Right. You referenced it earlier. I want to go back to it because this is, it's kind of tongue in cheek, but why is it that in the flushing world, the word sit turned into yip or yup or hip or whatever, hup, whatever you guys use. Where did that come from? Like, what is it?
It came from Europe.
Okay.
That's what they do in England, and that's really kind of the mecca for flushing dogs. That's why you want an English Springer or an English Cocker.
Yeah, I've always thought that was kind of interesting because it's you hear it, you go out there and you hear people yelling hup or whistle maybe, but you hear hup and it's like the first time it catches you off guard. I'm like, I don't know what hup is, like, but it just goes to show the definition of the word actually means nothing to the dog. You could train that dog to sit on, fill in whatever word you want to use. You can train a dog to sit on stand, right? Like really throw people for a loop on that. But yeah, I always thought that was fun. Another thing that I've appreciated from afar, and I'm curious, is the more traditional style of the test participants and judges. You guys dress to the nines on these trials. And I kind of like that as somebody who's kind of a snob with dressing up. Like you catch me in a collar and a tie, it's a very rare occasion. But when you guys,
it's a funeral or a wedding, huh?
Right? But when you guys showed up to the St. Huberts trial, the quote unquote traditional flushing folk were decked out with the tie and button up shirt and collared shirt and everything. I kind of like that. It was just, very traditional. It felt kind of organic and authentic. It wasn't forced by any means. Like, talk to me, like, is it just something that's just stuck around from whenever the trials first came around?
That comes from England too. You see what they wear. They were trousers there, by the way. But they dress up with a coat and tie and go hunting, and especially when I'm judging, I wear a tie. If I'm running a dog, and if it's hot, I'm not. but it's a way to honor the game and honor the sport and honor the tradition, and it looks nice. It does. The I'll go back to the first Boykin Nationals that I went to. We all showed up in our orange overalls and were ready to hunt, right? Which was fine. But then we started getting nice spaniel judges that came in and they were dressed like that. I'm like, wait a minute. We need to up our game and honor it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we have.
Yeah.
The first Boykin Nationals, if your dog was steady, you probably won.
Yeah.
Well, and now we're running braces and really having real trials.
Yeah. Well, like I said, like you said, the honor of it was just like the devotion, and people took it serious, but not overly serious, right? Like you're not out in tuxedos or anything. It was just kind of a nice respect and tip of the hat to the people that came before that helped build it. And I thought that was kind of a neat perspective. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't want to be wearing a tie out in a field on a next field trial by any means, but
I'm expecting it.
But I admired it from afar.
Well, it looks good. They know you're the judge, right?
Yep.
And we even had some participants that wore ties.
Yeah.
And it makes it more of a gentleman's game, so to speak.
Well, and in today's day and age, it's just refreshing to see that some people still, prioritize or prize something such as that, when heck, now you go to Walmart and there's no telling what the other people in the store are going to be wearing or not wearing. Like, we live
which
in
PJs.
and I can't speak too out of line here, because I'm one that, just give me a pair of Crocs and shorts and t-shirt, I'm good to go. But it is always nice to see people that kind of respect the environment, if you will,
sure,
and the just the overall, like, I don't know, I don't even know the right word for it, to be honest, but yeah, it was just a nice little touch.
Well, I don't want everybody to think that it's a pompous thing. We weren't wearing breeks and tassels and all that. But we did have a button-up shirt and a tie, and I may have had my Birkenstocks on too.
Right.
So it's an honor, but it's not a way to be pompous or look down at somebody or anything like that. It really is. Hey, we're taking this seriously, and we're honoring the game.
Right. Right. Well, getting out of the GQ magazine and getting back into the field. We've kind of talked about the flushing. We've talked about the steadiness after the flush and everything. What level of retrieve are we putting on these dogs? Are you guys going out there, because there are so many retrieving breeds in the flushing game? Do you guys require a pretty substantial level of retrieving at the top level? Like, are we doing hand signals and casting and all that stuff? Talk to me about what's kind of the general rule of thumb.
So we'll talk about it in terms of flushing dogs. The flushing dog blind is called a hunt dead. And the best way to describe it, and I'll go back to a dove hunt, is I'm shooting birds, and I know this other one I shot landed somewhere over here. So I need to be able, and for some reason my dog didn't see it. I need to be able to direct him to the area to hunt. Now, do I need a retriever level blind where I drive his nose directly to it? No, I don't want to see that. I want to see the dog hunt, but I want to be able to, like you said earlier, push my dog out there and then hunt at that spot. And I would expect that in any trial. The retrieve is part of what you're doing. You're not just producing game. You're producing game, and you're bringing it back, and you're handing it to me in a pleasant way. Yeah. And not in a non-chewed up way.
Right.
And I think pressure makes chewers too, because they're anxious.
Yeah. They're anticipating that they're just like, oh, if I get to them, the pressure is going to still be there, and they're just kind of leaking out of their mouth, and they know that if they come to your side, that they're still just going to be met with more pressure. Yeah,
so it's an anxiety thing. But you'd ask about the retrieve, and I'll say, because a Boykin has a retriever history, that there is some focus on that, and you're probably going to get a better retrieve out of a Boykin if it's complicated. I've gone to a couple of Cocker trials and Springer trials, and if that the dog had beautiful field work, sat and was steady, the guy didn't blow his whistle, wasn't being obnoxious, had a nice quiet hunt, and the retrieve was slightly complicated, and the dog didn't make it, and he's out. And all I could think of was, if you had just a little bit of retriever training, because what you just saw actually had a name in the retriever world, and it's something you train for, and your dog would have hammered it and looked amazing. So I do think that there could be more retriever work baked into the flushing dog game, because at the end of the day, your goal is to bring back game.
Right.
And which, back to the St. Huberts, that's what I love about it. You're going to get dinged big time if you don't bring that bird back, because that's why we're here.
Yeah.
But so a pretty retrieve is always pretty to me. And it's going to give you some points.
And that type of retrieve makes a heck of a lot more sense to me than your typical quote unquote blind retrieve, to where what you're talking about, where you send the dog and they just front foot it and pick it up and come back. It's cool. Don't get me wrong. Like, I appreciate the hell out of it. It's flashy. I appreciate the level of training and dedication it takes to do some of those really, really long blinds and marks. But from a practicality standpoint, from a hunter standpoint, the blind that you just described makes so much more sense to me.
Oh, absolutely.
You have the nose on the dog, right? Like, I don't have to rely on where I think the bird dropped. Let's steer the dog in the area that it's at, and then allow that nose on the dog to find it. And then I'm not having to blow my whistle 500 times to get my dog to sit on a dime. Whereas maybe I'm 10 yards off, if I'm talking 100 yards away from where I think the bird fell, your depth perception, by the time the dog gets out there, you might be missing out on it. But then here you have a dog 100 yards out that's totally dependent on you guiding them. And if you don't have that hunt them up command, it's like, well, now it defeats the purpose. Now you're going 100 yards out there to go find a bird.
Right. And how often have you shot a bird at 200 yards away or has landed 200 yards away that has a nice orange piece of tape next to it for you to see? It really is hunter focus. Heck, if I've got a blind, a bird that fell 200 yards, I'm not going to expect my dog to run out there and get it. We're going to go find it together, or I'm definitely not going to leave it there. But if I'm hunting ducks, I'm not going to send my dog for 200 yards, because if I'm hunting ducks, I want to be somewhere close enough to my dog that I can rescue him if he gets in trouble. It's your dog's job to find the bird, and really, it's your dog's job to mark the bird too. But sometimes that just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
You hit a covey of quail, you shot one, you're doing this, and your dog's looking around. It's nuts there for that brief period of time.
Well, and let's also be realistic about this when we're talking about a hunting scenario, not a field trial setup or concept or anything like that. If you are hunting and you have a bird that goes down 200 plus yards away from you, the odds are of that duck being stone dead are pretty slim. You shot it, it's crippled, it's sailing on you, and if it lands in water, by the time your dog gets 200 yards, especially if you have steadiness and you released them, if that dog's not already moving there, that crippled bird could be on the other side of the county by the time the dog gets there. And so to me, it's an argument even that much more to an actual real hunting scenario, to have that dog that you can guide in a general area, have them pick up the odor and track and work its way to that duck. And that's why, to me, that type of blind retrieve just makes more sense to me. But there's also something really cool about watching a lab do a 400 or 500 yard blind
It's
retrieve.
impressive. I'm real impressed with what they can do with their dogs. But I will say, as they progress and get further into their training, that they're a lot slower, a lot more deliberate, intentional, and again, it's impressive. But I want my dog to have a different style than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So, talk to me about have you ever tried pairing your flushers up with pointers? Have you tried doing the dual?
I'm glad
tandem?
You asked.
Okay.
I've done it a couple times with a buddy in Birmingham who had setters.
Okay.
And so it was really kind of funny. The first time out, it didn't take long before my dog figured out that a point meant there was a bird right there. I'm going to keep an eye on this setter here. And so what we did is when the dog got on point, I brought my Boykin in to flush and then do the retrieve. The setter really couldn't care less about the retrieve. In fact, this one did not care at all about the retrieve, which was great because flush went up, my dog went and got the shot, and he's already looking for the singles. And so the cooperation on it was beautiful. And like I said, we did it a couple times, and it was like they had done it for a long time together. So if you get a chance, it is really neat.
I'm gonna have it one day. Like it's something that I really would like to have, to where I have a pointing dog as, one of my setters maybe, and Rachel would be great at this too. I've toyed around with it with my dogs. Just my buddies have a lab or something. We've toyed around with it. But one of these days I'm going to have it in-house, to where I have a flushing dog of some sort, Cocker, Springer, Boykin, whatever. But it really appeals to me. Not even so much for, I'm not 100% sold that it will necessarily produce more birds for me, but I'm more appealed to it from the strategy of it sets you up for the shot better, to where you're not the one going in under a brush or a tree or thicket trying to kick the bird out. You can set up and you get the full benefits of having the flushing dog, while you had the benefits of the pointing dog stretching the horizon and finding birds that you otherwise probably wouldn't have, because you didn't feel like walking 500 yards over to the next ridge.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so you have that, and I would probably walk your flusher at heel.
Yep.
And then have him flush and retrieve. And I think that you'll recover more that way.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Recovery more, especially if you have a setter or pointer or just a pointing dog in general that just not really keen on retrieving. Just having that flushing dog, to where it's like, hey, so many of the people that buy these pointing dogs, they may not have an interest in putting a retrieve on that dog. They bought that dog to go find game, 500 plus yards out. That's not what they got that dog for, was to retrieve. So you kind of have the best of both worlds there, if that's kind of where your style or preference takes you. So
yeah, it was beautiful. It was a beautiful thing to watch. It was a lot of fun, and it was really fun watching the dogs learn about each other.
Yeah. John, I could keep picking your brain on this. Again, it's a brand new world. I have limited experience in it. So I'm curious, as we start kind of steering this to a landing, what's something that I should have asked you about flushing dogs that I haven't?
That is a really good question. We've covered a lot. We've covered how to, different types of pressure, different kinds of dogs, how to hunt closely, how to push them out. The dogs being soft, eager to please, but a heightened sense of fairness. Those are all really important to a flushing dog. I'll say one more thing. So my grandfather always had a kennel full of pointers, and he didn't want you talking to him or messing with him. You're going to screw up my hunting dog. Don't. And we talked about the cooperation between a flushing dog and the handler. It's really a team sport. And the only way that dogs learn to communicate with you is by being with you. So I would highly suggest anybody that's looking at getting a flushing dog that you're not getting a kennel dog. You're getting a dog that's with you in the house, because that's how they learn to communicate. You learn to communicate with each other, and it makes it a whole lot easier to have that cooperation in the field.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You know, whether or not the dogs feel more, whether they like you or not, a little bit more to where they're more willing to be cooperative or not. I think there's something, whether you agree with that or not, I think there's something to be said that you just learn the dog better. Your own self, you know how to read the dog better because you're seeing them day in, day out more often in different environments and stuff like that. So even if it doesn't make a bit of difference from the dog's perspective, which I think it does to a certain level, I think that if anything else, it just gives you more time with your dog. And at the end of the day, man, just more time with your dog. Like
that's why we're doing this, right?
It's why we're doing it. Yeah. And I think so many people truly underestimate the value of just spending time with your dogs. I think it makes a very big difference. And I know that it's the difference in my dogs in the field and hunting based on, you know, if I've had more time with them or not. And it doesn't have to be completely training or productive, but just vegging out on the couch with them. It's just like, I think that goes a long way with a lot of these dogs.
I absolutely do.
Yeah. One last question for you. I do need to ask this. I was about to wrap it up, but I think my wife and my mother-in-law might be angry with me because they're a couple South Carolina girls. I'm curious. Are you familiar with how Boykins kind of more or less became the South Carolina dog? Like,
sure.
Yeah. Can you touch on that for me?
I can touch on it. So early 1900s, this brown dog showed up at a church, and he either followed him home or the dog got in the church and got kicked out. But anyway, this fellow brought it home with him, and noticed that he was really a natural retriever, and he named him Dumpy. So our founding Boykin is named Dumpy. But he was a small brown dog. Who knows what it was or had in it. And a fellow named Whit Boykin outside of Camden, was this guy's buddy. And he brought Dumpy over, and Whit liked him and had some more training done on the dog, and was really impressed with Dumpy, and found another brown curly dog to breed to him. And if you hadn't asked me, I would remember that dog's name. But that's what started the breed, and that was in the early 1900s. Dogs that are known to be in it are Chesapeake. That's where you get the yellow eyes on some of them. English Springer Spaniel, American Water Spaniel. Probably some sneaky neighbor dog, right?
Right. That neighbor dog's in all breeds at some point.
That's right. He's been around. But it wasn't until the mid to late 70s, I think 1977, that the Boykin family and people that own Boykins got together and said, you know what? We've got a lot of dogs out here that people are calling Boykins, and they're not. Let's get a foundation stock and start a registry. And so the Boykin Spaniel Society was formed. It's the official registry of the Boykin Spaniel, even though you can now register with AKC or UKC. They've been around. They built the help me out here.
The standards and
thank you standard. And but not only that, having a Boykin Spaniel Society registered Boykin has a lot of advantages. It's a breed specific registry. There's a wholly owned health foundation that, together they have more than $1 million in, that clubs or even individuals, me being a Boykin Spaniel Society member, when my dog turns 2, I get a letter that says, "Hey, we're going to help you pay for hips, eyes, heart test because our goal is to make healthier and healthier Boykins."
I like that.
And the AKC is not going to do that for you. The UKC is not going to do that for you, but the Boykin Spaniel Foundation will. So that's my pitch for a BSS dog. But most of us are registering with all 3 now because there are different games to play in each one. And I used to. I'll probably get hate mail for this, but I used to laugh and mock the confirmation ring. But as it turns out, guess what? A dog that's put together well can hunt longer for you.
Imagine that.
So yeah, imagine that. So having that working with you and with Boykins and AKC registered Boykins, there's not a split. There's not a show in a field. They're Boykin Spaniels. And I went down to a show in Greenville earlier this year because that's where I got my puppy. So my puppy was bred to a dog that produces ring champions because the dog's put together well, right? And almost all the Boykins that I saw there are people that I knew that hunted their Boykins, that ran field trials and hunt tests. So really doing what the breed's supposed to do, but also trying to improve the dog's conformation and ability to do those things.
Right.
So I'll fall on the sword and tell everybody I'm sorry I laughed at them earlier, but it's true.
Yeah.
If that's not part of what you're trying to do, you may have the best hunting dog that's got squirrely hips or just can't put in a day's hunt.
Yeah. Well, I think the key word in what you just said is part of. It's not, some people get too carried away on either side of it saying field only matters or ring, the show ring only matters. It's like, no, both play a part. But something that I really like is the fact that the breed club or the society that you were referencing helps pay and encourage people to do the proper testing. To me, that makes a lot of sense into something that I think a lot of breed clubs should really consider, especially when, you're not asking AKC or UKC to offer that up, even though that is the registry. But if you're a quote unquote breed club, that makes sense to me that you would encourage the members within that breed club to do quote unquote correct by the breed. It does make sense.
And the society is neither AKC nor UKC. It's their own registry.
Yeah.
And so they've been around long enough, accumulated money to be able to do these things. Heck, pay for DNA testing, or something shows up in the gene pool because it's small, and we go, hey, we better look into this. Let's throw some money towards this to see if it really is a problem or not.
Right.
And you're not going to see that with anybody else, especially with a small breed like this. They're not going to give us a lot of attention.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So we're registering this many labs, but the Boykins have a problem. Well, they can deal with it, right? So it's a great thing, and definitely if you have a Boykin, register with the Boykin Spaniel Society, and then consider the other ones.
There you have it. It's pretty interesting. My vet here, my local vet, his name is Whit, and he runs a Boykin. So I'm curious now if he knows that. I'll have to bring that up to him next time I see him. But John, this was a lot of fun. I'm glad that we're finally able to do this. I look forward to the St. Huberts Trial. Again, those dates are February 8th and 9th. This is 2025. Obviously, you can't really go back in time in 2024 and catch that one. But if you want to sign up, John and I will be there. I'm sure that we'll kind of circle back and do some kind of roundtable interview or something afterwards, recapping this one. But if last year's event is any indication, I'm really excited, and I think the event's only going to improve this year. So if you're wanting to get signed up, don't wait, because there are limited slots in each trial class. And John, if you have anything else to add, if not, we can wrap this up and I can let you get on with your life.
Well, let's wrap it up, but I look forward to seeing you in February.
Absolutely. I appreciate it.
All right. Have a great day.
You too.